I've been installing this power reduction mod in my customers' amps for years now, and today I'm going to show you how to install it into your own amp. I've not seen this mod anywhere online, but no doubt it's there somewhere. Like just when you think you've come up with something original, you find Jeff the guitar tech from 1945 already did it. This mod is actually a bit of a secret, and it's probably going to be a little bit controversial, to be honest. The mod that I'm going to show you today is one that I first started installing back in 2008 when I got into doing this full time, building, modifying, and repairing effects pedals, amps, and guitars. Now in that time I've been really lucky to work with some really awesome musicians. If you've never modified a tube amp before, this is a great first mod because you're not working directly with dangerous voltage. Now if you haven't already, please watch the video I uploaded recently about how not to die. It's how to work safely around tube amplifiers. So things I like about this mod, well, the first thing that I really like about this mod is that when it is off, it is actually off. So when you turn that dial all the way to 0, your amp is back to being 100% stock. Now, with a lot of other attenuator mods and a lot of other external attenuators, they are always doing something no matter what. It's great to be able to turn it off and know your amp is back to 100% stock again. This mod actually extends your tube life, which is nice because a lot of other mods don't. They actually decrease your tube life. It also sounds great, and later on I'm going to do some tests against the Universal Audio aux. Now that's kind of the Rolls Royce of attenuators, and I just want to use it as a measuring stick to see how this mod stacks up against something that is sort of regarded as an industry standard, I suppose. The aux is a bit of a different animal compared to this mod, but I'm going to get into that over on my fourth wall page. I'll have some links down in the description. If you haven't before, go over and check it out. There's loads of videos and different posts over there, and there's even a $1 a month tier, and there's also a free account as well if you just want to go over there and check it out to see what it's all about. Okay, so what is this mod? What is it all about? How does it work? Let's get into it. So in a nutshell, this mod is about rebiasing your tube amp's phase inverter, which is the first part of your amp's power stage. So firstly, we have to work out where the section is in your amp so we can work on it. So let's grab a few example schematics just so I can show you what to look for. Here's a schematic of a JCM 800. So here's your preamp stages going all the way through here to the power stage. Now the power stage is made up of two sections. You've got your phase inverter, and then you've got your output section where your power tubes are, and then obviously your output transformer, that sort of thing. The phase inverter is what we need to look for today. So this is a Marshall schematic. Let's check out this is a Vox AC30. And look, you've got the same sort of thing, a whole bunch of preamp stages, and then you come down here and you see this arrangement here of a phase inverter, which is called a long tail pair. The way you can tell, it's always got this section where the resistors meet in this like cross or a plus. That's the Vox one. That's kind of what that looks like. See, you've got the cross there of those resistors. Let's grab another one. Now this one looks super busy. When you pull this schematic, you might be like, oh man, there's so much going on here. But if you just follow it through, find your power stage and your output stage, and then you'll find your phase inverter just before it, and see that a little bit of a different arrangement here, but see the cross is right here. With the phase inverter, the cathodes are joined together of the two different triodes inside that tube, and then from there it goes to a resistor, and that is the one that we want, the cathode resistor. When people refer to power tube distortion, quite a lot of that distortion is actually being generated here in the phase inverter and also in the power tubes as well. So I thought, how would it sound if I rebiased the phase inverter to lower its headroom and output? Would it still give a good tone like the other methods of power reduction? And it turns out it sounds freaking awesome. And it also has the same sort of power reduction results. Okay, so first you need a schematic. So what you need to do is go online and have a look for your specific amp model number, and you should be able to pull a schematic. There's loads of them available for free. Now with this series of amp mods that I'm doing, I want to make them fairly universal so the mod can work across multiple amps. If that sounds cool to you, please hit that subscribe button and definitely mash that like button as well. That is what really helps get these videos out there, so that would be really cool. Okay, so today's amp that I'm going to do this on is a Jet City JCA 20H. Now here is the schematic of that power stage. You've got your phase inverter there, and here's your output tubes and your output transformer and so on. But this phase inverter is that long-tailed pair type with that cross there, and here is our resistor here, the one that is connected to the cathodes of those two triodes of that tube, and it is a 470 ohm resistor. Quite often you'll find it's a low value like this, 470 ohm, 1.2K in Voxes, but that's the resistor that we're going to alter right there. So what we're going to need today, we're going to need a 100K audio pot. It's actually pretty basic really. We just need one of these. We're going to need a resistor, so you're not going to know exactly what type yet until you pull the schematic for your amp. And then you're going to need a bit of hookup wire, just some standard 300 volt 22 gauge wire will be great. And then a soldering iron, solder, you know, all the usual stuff. So once you've got the amp out of the chassis and you've safely drained all those capacitors like I showed in that other video, then you have to find that component. So this schematic says R18 is a 470 ohm resistor. That's the one we want. Now, what you need to do is confirm that. I never trust a schematic because a lot of them have errors. So I'm going to be going through with my multimeter. I found R18 is this one right here. It looks like it's 470 because of the color code on the resistor. Yep, it's 470 ohm. Now, it should be connected directly to the cathode here on this tube. I can see the tube layout here, the phase inverter tube. It should be connected to those two cathodes, which it is. So that is definitely the resistor I need there, that one right there. Now I'm going to be completely removing that resistor out. I think by the looks, I'm going to install the pot on the front face of the amp. So this is it's going to be around about here. I'll be installing it between that treble and the volume control. I'm going to install it on the front just because it's really close to that resistor. I don't really want to run wires all the way to the back of the amp. Okay, so this is how I like to arrange this pot. So we've got a 100K audio taper pot. Okay, now on the back here, I've got this resistor, this 470 ohm resistor. This is soldered between the center and the right hand lug. Then I've got wires coming from the two outer lugs. Now these are going to go directly into where that resistor came from that you're going to pull off the board. I'll show you once it's in the amp. And before we do the big aux versus the amp test, I'll do a quick demo just to show you what it kind of sounds like. Okay, so here it is installed into the amp. Now you can see I've put that pot in the front side of the chassis where all the actual controls are. So it's kind of handy having it on the face actually. And I've wired it exactly into where that resistor came from. So I pulled the old resistor out. You can actually use the resistor on the pot if you want to. I prefer to use a new one. I've run those wires exactly to where that was. So now this pot is taking over the job of that cathode resistor. What I'll do now is I'll hook it up just to show you how it works, and then we'll get into those tests. We've got the amp on now, it's all warmed up. I've got the attenuator off. So at the moment the amp is essentially stock. Now I'm just picking it up from a mic in the room. When we do the test, I'll use a proper mic setup. Okay, so let's not touch any of these controls and let's move this attenuator. So at the moment it's off, let's move it to half. Now when you move it, you'll hear a bit of noise and the sound sort of dips out for a second, and that's because it takes a little bit of time for that phase inverter to sort of rebalance itself and sort itself out. But now we're on half attenuation. So this is at full, about half. And if we go to the maximum attenuation, that is bedroom quiet really at the moment. Okay, so time for these tests. I've got to get all this stuff up into the studio because I can't do it down here in the workshop today. We are just chocker full of repairs. So I'll drag the amp and the cabinet up there and the aux, and we'll get into those tests. Okay, so now it's time for the test. We're going to be comparing the attenuator mod against the aux. Now the aux is a different type of animal, and I will explain that in a bit more detail on my fourth wall page. So for the first test, what we're going to do is we're going to set the controls and just leave them where they are. And then I'm going to start with no attenuation, then half, and then full attenuation. And I'm going to do that on both the aux and the mod. So at the moment, I've got it set up so pretty much everything's at half. The gain is a little dipped out, but all the other controls are at halfway. This is what the stock amp sounds like. Right, so that was actually really interesting. I actually thought the OX was going to completely cream this mod. Like, I love the OX. I've had it since they first came out and I use it pretty much every day. But I was surprised how well the mod sort of held its own against the OX. So that was really cool. One thing I did notice, and I think I mentioned earlier, is that the OX is always doing something. So even when the OX was off, I don't know if you could hear it through YouTube, but it's attenuating a little bit of that. It's attenuating a little bit compared to the stock sound. You are losing a little bit of volume there. Not a lot. Overall, I actually thought the mod was pretty comparable to the OX. It did a really, really good job. Okay, so let's have a look at this next test. Because both of these types of attenuators are different, for this next test, I really want to try and match the headroom. So I want to adjust the controls on the amp when I'm using the OX to try and match the headroom of when I'm using that attenuator mod, because it's a different type of mod. So this is really a tone thing and a feel thing. This is only going to apply to the half and the full attenuation settings. So I'm just going to set those up now. Okay, so obviously listening back to the clips, I didn't exactly get that headroom match just right. The OX definitely had a little bit more push there. I had to push up the master a little bit to try and match that headroom, so I got the same sort of amount of compression, I suppose, so the feel was about the same. But in saying that, it did actually feel very, very similar. I have to say, for me, the OX was definitely a little nicer in this sort of situation where you're just pushing that master. You're getting more of a blend of that phase inverter clipping mixed with power tube clipping, and when you're using this mod you definitely get less of that power tube clipping because it's lowering that output getting to those power tubes, so you're not going to be pushing those power tubes over into or beyond their headroom limits really. But still incredibly comparable. I never actually thought it was as good as what it is. I always really liked the mod, but I thought things like the OX, which here is a $3,000 unit, was just so much better, but it actually isn't humongously different, which is quite surprising. I just want to talk really quickly about master volumes and post phase inverter master volumes. Now, a lot of people might be saying, why can't you just install one of these? Well, it doesn't work the same. If you use a master volume or a post phase inverter master volume more so, you're still going to be pushing those preamp tubes hard and getting a lot more preamp tube clipping before you even get to power tube distortion, or power stage distortion I should say. So it is not the same thing. I hope you really enjoyed this mod today, guys. It's something I haven't seen out there before, so put it in your amp, let me know how it goes. It's very amp specific because you're working with the circuitry in the amp and the amp's design. The results vary between amps, but I thought it worked really, really well in that Jet City. I was actually quite impressed. Anyway, guys, have a great week and we'll catch you next time.